Hey everybody, Brian here from quantlabs.net. Okay, so I am going to show you my first Python script from the ground up. Really, I'm just copying code from other places. But first, let's talk about the data that we're going to use. In this video, what I'm going to do is download a file, a zip file, and unzip it, all done in Python. I'm going to show you what kind of data I'm working with and just some opinions on other languages and data. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to go after a uh, data source from Eurostat. And all this data I'm looking at is always forward-looking. I've shown this before using MATLAB in my previous trading system, but this is just all done in Python. Now the other thing is that I want you to understand is that this data is forward-looking. You can use past pricing of whatever, which is fine, but don't use it exclusively. You want to get sentiment on what's happening in regions by sector, and this is a very good classic source. Now, my arbitrage system, which is basically a glorified paired trading system, is nothing but looking at government data. And the two regions it's going to focus on is the US and Europe. I could also add in China, but to be truthful, I don't trust China. Just I don't not a fan of it at this point. But Europe and the Eurozone and the US is obviously fine. And between them, volume-wise, they probably represent something like 2/3 of the world trading market and trading activity. So why don't we just focus on that for now? So in here, what we're looking at is a region by in the Eurozone by country. Not only that, but by industry, how the houses. So we're getting a snapshot on a forward basis, on a forward-looking basis, to see how things are uh, operating in the world of industry, services, consumer sentiment. There's other ones that you can get for like retail trade, building or construction, but you can download everything by just this right here. And that's what we're going to download in our Python script. So let's break down the Python script by itself. Now, if I go into the script itself, you'll notice that there's two steps. This is really geared towards newbies. Uh, Let me just make some comments about Python versus other languages. Years ago, if I'd known about Python, all this stuff would have been done a lot faster and a lot sooner. But I'm kind of glad I went through the literally 5 years, I won't call it wasted time, but to understand the limitations of other languages. Specifically, I've always worked with Java, C Sharp I played with, MATLAB obviously, and R. Now, when I look at Python, I'm really more and more digging it. And obviously, the open source is a lot has a lot of advantages. It's free, blah blah blah. On top of that, there's so much community support now, quite literally for Python. It's quite mind blowing. It's probably as good or better than even MATLAB and C Sharp, even though those languages have been out a lot longer. But I'm digging Python. On top of that, setting up the environment is a bitch, but trying to get that environment set up on Windows is not fun. But when you do it in a Mac or Mac being a Linux-like environment, it's pretty easy. So once you get your environment set up, you can start obviously developing your scripts. So as I said, the first step we're looking at is to just basically download our our file. So that zip file I just showed you, this is the actual URL you download it from, and then this is the name of the file we're going to save it as on our local system. So just so everybody understands my notation, if you join my membership or whatever, this is how I do stuff. I try to leave as many breadcrumbs as possible for people. So what I do is I'll leave a comment on where I got this line or where I dug this code from. So no different. Obviously, I'm always referring back to Stack Overflow. So if you go to this URL here at Stack Overflow, this is where I got the code from. And let me just show you here. So if you go to this particular resource or link, you'll see where I got the code here. It's somewhere one of these lines, but this is where I got it from. So that's pretty straightforward. And in my case, I'm getting the file, that zip file I just showed you, on top of I'm calling it this all euro zip locally on my system. All right, now the other thing is I want to take that zip file and basically extract it with all the files in it. So what we're doing here is, again, this is where I got the resource from. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a zip file and decompress it. And we're going to put it into a subdirectory called downloads. So if we go to my terminal here, you'll see what I mean. So here we have our newly created zip file, all euro zip. Here is the subdirectory that I just mentioned, the downloads, and then these are all the files, all the Excel files that get extracted into with this line right here. So that's pretty cool, and it's pretty straightforward. No complexities there. Now, if you ask me on my experience with R versus Python, I think R is pretty specific for just math and statistics, but truthfully, Python's better because it's a more broad-based language where it includes functionality like this, do this. Probably in R is a real pain in the ass, and then to me, the code in R is really ugly, and it takes me years to try to understand what the code was doing if I've not looked at it in the last year. But with Python, it's relatively straightforward, and that's good. So let me just run this, and let's see what this does. So we're just going to load up our Python interpreter, and then the name of the file is process. Well, I'm in the wrong directory here. Just got to go up. So we're gonna run this process euro. So we'll load up the script and then process euro. Takes a bit of time to download the file. Should put a little print message in there, and then it's just gonna extract it. And just to verify everything, okay, what am I doing wrong here? CD downloads, okay? So if I look at these files, they're newly created at 8:19, so it's actually the same time. So these are newly created files. So that is working. So there you go. That's our first script, and I'm learning because Python's really easy to not set up, but to learn as I'm doing this on the fly. So I just want to show you and highlight this. I do get a lot of, about good chunk of people don't quite understand Python or programming, but from my experience so far, Python is easy to pick up if you can get everything set up, your environment. Now, for those that are new at what I do, just come under YouTube Quant Labs channel, and that will take you to go through my playlist. And somewhere in here, you'll see my set of tutorials here. There's a bunch of videos in here that will show you how to set up the Python environment for both Windows and, in my case, I think I even got Linux, and I may even have Mac OS. So I'm covering all the major OSs. If you're asking me, try to get a Mac, man. It's so much better. It's just glorious. Where you get the GUI, all the fun stuff in terms of the sexiness on the graphical user interface here in Mac, on top of the power of Linux. So it is a great system. I've gone on and on about it. I'm not going to do that, but I do cover all the environments here for both all the major languages. So as it stands right now, there we go. That's our first script. I'm going to continue along in this one script to extract and go through and decipher and interpret all these Excel files. Now, while we're here, why don't we do that? So let me just see what we got here. So I'm just going to open one up and just show you the presentation of the data. You know what? I'll do that in another video. Yeah, that'll probably be easier. Talk to you later.